go see what he can get done. He's going to wall off with that command center on the natural. So not going to hide his intentions of taking that quick third base. And when you delay upgrades and whatnot like this, and you start moving into the tanks, I'm just waiting to see Heromarine grab the gas in his natural expansion and tell us what his plans are for this game. There's that armory you were talking about, Zombie Grub.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of Hellions to work with, right? But we are going to be going into mech. I mean, you would have wanted to start a tech lab a long time ago for that stim, even if you are going to get that nice and safe tank, which he also revealed with the little ling poke at the front. But keeping tabs on Serral with the Banshee, not necessarily doing a ton of damage. The amount of Hellions he had in the field didn't really... I mean, they would have it like a miracle, a mini miracle to actually do a bunch of drone damage. So not really expecting a lot of... gains in the early game for either player, really. Serral's been mostly left to his macro, just smart positioning with units, making sure that nothing snowballs when it really shouldn't. And the only thing it's missing so far, I think, is that he hasn't technically scouted Heromarine. I'm thinking that he's starting to like, okay, Hellions, that tank, probably going to be in that mech again.
And based on this as well, it's all attack upgrades. So getting melee attack and ranged attack, not even looking for Carapace is Serral.
So I believe that's what he did last time, but also the timing here was just, his Overseer saw, and that's when everything started. So, I mean, leaving room for flexibility in case it was a weirder style that did maybe go into something different, but getting that complete confirmation, and he is swapping into Hive as well soon.
I love that focus fire, by the way. The Banshee's getting rid of all of the Banelings that are rolling around in there.
And Heromarine is like skyrocketing forward into that. Additional starports as that Cyclone upgrade finishes.
I love it. With the fusion core as well. So that's going to be Liberator range, and that is such an important, crucial upgrade, being able to help zone out. And I love what you just touched on as well, Zombie Grub. When we look at the composition, the way that these armies interact, Cyclone Hellion is really big. It takes up a lot of space, and that's kind of a weird thing to key in on. But this army is very bulky. It's best when spread out and hitting multiple points on the map at once. And the defensive capabilities of this army, compared to like having tanks and Vikings that stop the Vipers, is terrible. It's actually really, really hard to hold on, because if you have stand and deliver, the Zerg player will just run Banelings into all your units and kill everything, or if you retreat, they'll just kill your base, and then they've still gotten what they came to do. So the Liberators are very important for helping to make that possible. I think back to players like, I think it was Masa as well, just like throwing tons of Liberators on every base whenever they're moving out and attacking. I believe Heromarine did that too in his series that he originally won against Serral. Pulling the Zerg player apart is so important. This comp can do a lot. If you take like just these Banshees hitting one side, and then a few Cyclones with a few Hellions hitting two of the other bases, can really do wonders.
But there's not a lot going on Heromarine side of the map. One attempt finally here with some Lings, which aren't bad actually, only a couple tanks to help out. But that's probably going to be it.
So here we have the first actual engagement happening in this game. There's the Abducts pulling in. In these situations, I'd love to see Heromarine just siege the Liberators as they're pulled in, because they can, weirdly enough, they are the tankiest unit in this army forehand. The Hellions are like, what, 90 hit points, the Cyclones are 120, but those Liberators, since you've been going into the armor upgrades at 180 health, can really soak it up. And even losing a good amount of them isn't that bad if the Hellions can get their plus light damage onto those Hydralisks to clean them up. So it's a really difficult army to engage for Serral, because you want to use the Abducts on the Cyclones, you want to pull out the Liberators from being sieged, and it's not always going to be enough, because you want to also do something like maybe throw a Parasitic Bomb, as the Liberator count is only going to increase as this game goes on.
Yeah. Serral is getting, again, to what you would usually expect against the styles. So the Vipers, yes, of course, with Hydras, but also into that Greater Spire. I think Serral's actually not gone for them too often, but I think any additional spellcasts are going to be great. But he's been trying to get Heromarine out of position. He finally does it. Finds that fourth base. It is a planetary, but I don't believe it has any upgrades.
Train. Yep. Blow this up with the support of those Hydralisks.
Yeah,
and
easy.
Yeah, no building armor, no high-sec auto tracking.
And really open up an opportunity to put Serral into that chokehold, that position where he doesn't feel like he can maneuver, and that's been the biggest difference so far. So now he's trying to find other ways to take on this army.
Yeah, and a lot of the tanks are going to get pulled in, going to siege the Libs up on top of it. But Serral getting some really good trades, and both players are maxed out, sure, but Serral, look at that, he's got 5,000 minerals, 5,000 gas, and a very powerful army. Neural Parasite is on the way. He already got Pathogen Glands, so we can see Infestors. And I like this change up. 5 Thors being added as well. to zone, but Thors have really good firepower. They're not bad in ground engagements against these armies, and they have a higher amount of range with their single target high impact payload than the Vipers do abduct. So if you have your Thors reasonably close to each other, Vipers try to come up close, you can actually insta-gib them before they get an opportunity to grab your units. And pulling in 5 Thors, well, then you're like dealing with 1,000 hit points that you've got to break down, more than that, to take down the army. We have another attack coming in on the west side here using those abducts. The Viking count really nice to get those hits, but Lightning Cloud particularly effective against siege tanks, and we're seeing even those extra command centers getting blown to pieces. Gonna get this one done. Level 3 ship weapons coming in for Heromarine, powering up his Liberators and his Vikings. Serral's Knight is very interested to see where this goes. Of course, the siege tanks are going to lose a lot of their potential once these Broodlords start showing up. It's going to be really in the hands of the Thors and the Vikings to keep those Broodlords away. Love using the lockout with the Cyclones. Can start to pepper down those Spore Crawlers from a safe distance. Let's see what happens. Be careful. Parasitic Bomb in the middle of those Vikings is going to be... Well, we're gonna have to put out a trigger warning for the Terran players in the chat. Okay, Nidus inside of the main base. Heromarine, what's it gonna be? What's he going to reposition? Liberators can move faster than everything else. If he had transformation servos, Vikings could try, but he needs them at home. So Serral's kind of forcing a little bit of an engagement, just trying to poke. And all the Hydras are in the main.
Yeah, he actually sent basically all of his ground army. He still has the Broodlords and the Vipers holding any really desperate push from Heromarine. Heromarine can't push that quickly on to creep into what is left over here, but so many Hydras are going to be ripping through his production. There goes a starport, there goes another orbital here, and if he splits, then he could also lose a lot more army trying to defend against this.
This is catastrophic amounts of damage. Hydralisks, we know that Nidus, you can pull back and very quickly. And he's going to kill these units that step forward, gets himself the Thor, the Cyclones. We talked about it, that main command center, factories, starports, and at this point, with the amount of money in bank that he has, it's like just suicide these Hydras as much as you need to, pick off as much as you can, recycle that supply into something else, especially consider that you've knocked your opponent down onto 1 starport. The air-to-air capabilities have been drastically culled. I love that, and this is the scariest thing about dealing with that late game Zerg setup is if you get forced, as you were talking about it, and just pushing and just being like, YOLO, I gotta attack and try to push it and just end this game right now. That's when those infestors become extremely useful with the Neural Parasite, being able to slow you down, chunk out your units. You are not going to really be able to repair once you're too far out. You need to make sure you're bringing SCVs. Heromarine does have a reasonable bit of money. I don't actually think he can spend it with his limited production at the moment. He's up to 9 factories, so he could put it. He can reinforce this pretty well, I guess, with Cyclone Hellion if he wants while he moves across the map. But Heromarine is currently down about 6,000 resources in terms of what he has lost this game, and that's going to come into. That's going to be very important when we look at the resources that Serral was able to get off the west side base that he's clearing out now, but he's also got that east side one, and the Broodlords come up, get a couple of shots off, a Neural Parasite. Looks like it tried to go up, but I think he actually killed the Broodlord he was trying to neural, or killed the Thor he was trying to neural before anything could happen there.
Yeah. Well, it was almost like all of the Thors neuraled, and I think Heromarine even noticed as we pulled back.
So that's where the Liberators are very useful, because they are great in terms of that support for being able to block those infestors from getting too close.
That was very messy. So a Blinding Cloud actually being very effective, kind of knocked out 3 or 4 Thors there. The Vikings were all done, and the Liberators had not yet been sieged. Very, very messy, really unideal there.
No Hellions to support the Thors anymore, so the Broodlords are finally able to push them up. Even though the Thors outrange the Broodlords, they are still extremely vulnerable on their own. Broodling's going to give chase, and because of the investment into those melee upgrades earlier on, those Broodlings are doing their full potential damage against the Thors. He's building 7 more right now. I'm not gonna lie, I love it. 4 starports, I believe, being added on top of this. And Big Thor is really, really good with a lot of Liberator Hellion support in endgame TVZ.
Yeah. No, it's certainly possible that Serral just sees like the Broodlords being very effective, makes more Broodlords, which he just did, and then doesn't, for instance, make more Neural Parasite options, you know, and then actually says, oh no, Thors are actually pretty good in this scenario. 1 Blinding Cloud won't quite cut it, not even 3 or 4, they can walk through it.
With the commitment into Broodlords by Serral, no, I love it. We're going to see there's some Pacific Rim combat coming up here once we get up to that 10+ Thor
Yeah.
mark, and all you need at that point is to have enough Liberators to push the Infestors away from knurling you,
Yep.
and enough Hellbats or Hellions to clean off the Broodlings, which is going to be about 2 or so volleys for the Hellions, and for Hellbats, they'll just one-shot Broodlings. So as long as you get that good core and you have enough Thors, you can really punch through a stupid amount of Zerg supply.
I am a little worried right now, like he does have a limited number of Hellbats, as he used like 6 or so trying to attack that base. He got a decent number of drones, but didn't get the hatchery, and Serral is still banking tons. So he's really got to take a good engagement here. I think it's absolutely possible, but this is where Serral's going to try and catch him out of position, be able to use abducts or get really, really sick blinding clouds and actually finally push in somewhere, but not wanting to be too overeager. This is a situation that Serral has found himself in a couple of times, not against Mech necessarily, but this is where everyone was like, wait a minute, is Serral actually beatable? Is when innovation took him to the super late game on this map, in fact, and hopefully he's learned a lot from that, but he also might be getting flashbacks right now of like, you know,
Yeah.
I thought I was winning this one. Hold on, here, like, Heromarines still not dead? Wait.
Yeah. I will say it's a funny thing to have to consider, but you don't want to abduct too many of these Thors at once, because these guys are very, very powerful. Pulling them all in together is going to allow them to actually still do what they need to do, which is just deal with the Broodlords, and then the rest of the army that follows up can actually handle a lot of this. So you want to try and piecemeal it if you can. You want to grab one at a time. It's very difficult, like I said, though, because the Thor has that 11 range, which is with its single target attack. The Viper's abduct the Vipers will get hit trying to go for the abduct, no matter what, if the Thor isn't otherwise distracted at that time.
Serral is encroaching. He's found Heromarines, one of his last bases, right? He needs to defend this as his bank isn't high enough to reproduce an entire mech army. How is Heromarine going to be able to take this fight? He sieges the Liberators. He's just mass repairing the planetary and biding his time.
Yep, Spores are trying to move up. Broodlord's going to get a few shots and got to be careful. Moving into where those liberation zones can actually cover the Thors now, and they're going to start to step forward with the planetary fortress to cover. I mean, I feel like, honestly, in this situation, with the way that this is set up, you want to try and push north. I don't know how I feel about the falling back just yet. The planetary is going to help clean off those Zerglings, or excuse me, the Broodlings, but you really want to get those Thors up to the Broodlords and let them start hitting them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he realized maybe he had not as many Hellions again as he would have liked. But he did take out a decent number of spellcasters. There we go. There's the range top of the Broodlords.
And you can start a step forward here. This is where having transformation servos becomes extremely important, because you want the Hellions to reinforce as fast as possible, but they function a lot better in this particular scenario as Hellbats.
Yeah. And I think that's...
As long as the Hellbats, because the Hellbats one-shot Broodlings is the biggest thing, especially with that +3 attack. So that means your Thors can step forward. Because the Thors can actually chase the Broodlords in this situation. There's not really anything else that can deal with the Thors, as long as you don't let the Zerg chip away at you.
A couple of Banelings do come in, so they are effective against those Hellbats. Actually taking out a ton of them. Fungal's even slowing down some of the Thors, encroaching on the Broodlords. And the Broodlords are still winning this fight. A couple blinding clouds as well, finding 3 or 4.
The spores, bringing these spores up, really well done by Serral, because now they're able to deal with the Liberators without having to expose the Corruptors, and the Neural Parasite to finish it off. Serral does a really good job of handling that mech composition.